please tap on the links shared in the episode notes. What's up? You are now listening to Americanized, a storytelling podcast where you'll hear from eclectic first and second generation Americans share their stories and real life experiences as children of immigrants. Have you ever considered or wondered how your birth order shapes your personality traits? In this episode, we continue our conversation with Nikkei, who is a wellness coach who reaches specifically first-gen eldest daughters to help them get out of their people-pleasing tendencies and live a more freeing life. And this time, we discuss birth order and her path to becoming a wellness coach, reaching this specific group of women, how she got there, and why. I related so much to her story. Even though I'm not the oldest daughter, I am the second oldest of 5. I do tend to assume that role and position quite frequently, especially with my sister living back home. And yesterday was my mother's birthday, and just planning everything with my siblings at the last minute was a big task for us, and I felt a lot of responsibility on my shoulders to have things set in motion for a successful evening to celebrate my mom. And in the midst of doing that, my husband, I think, gets frustrated with me taking on that role and was like, "Why are you doing all of this?" And in that moment, I thought back on my conversation with Nikkei and thinking about, it's just the dynamic, and I do take on more responsibility than I probably should. And, the people-pleasing tendencies for me is something that I am always working through, and I think culturally and with the birth order, having multiple younger siblings definitely play a role in that trait that I'm working through. If you feel like you can relate, definitely keep on listening to hear more. And if not, just keep on listening to hear more. Okay, so I would like to know the story or path behind you becoming a wellness coach for this very specific niche, eldest daughters who are also first gen. Why that category of woman, and how did that happen?
Yeah, so I caregave for both my parents. And so my mom has early onset Alzheimer's. So in the midst of, I caregave for my dad up until his passing. And then literally that was 2018. 2019, I was handling like his estate stuff, and I started getting phone calls from family members in Ohio saying, "Hey, something's off with your mom. Here's what's happening." And I was like, okay, but I can't deal with it right now because I'm dealing with stuff from my dad. So 2020 comes along and they're like, "Hey, it's getting a little bit worse." And so I was like, okay, I'm going to have to relocate. So I relocated back to Ohio. And during caregiving for my mom, I also was pursuing my wellness coach certification. But during this time, I was just in a really low mental state, and very depressed and sad and angry. I just felt so frustrated why I always had to be the one to self-sacrifice for other people, and why couldn't I do what I wanted to do for me, and why I always had to do for others. And it felt like I was just always getting the short end of the stick, even though technically I'm doing the right thing and I'm so strong. And so during that time, I remember I was laying in my bed, I was crying, I was just sad. And I just thought to myself, Nikkei, like, this is really hard, and you are always the person who has to do things, but you can either choose to allow this to make you better or make you bitter. And if you let it make you bitter, like, it's going to affect the way you show up in everything in your life. And if you let it make you better, who knows what other possibilities it could open for you. And I said in that moment, I'm like, I want this to make me better. And so from that decision forward, through a lot of like introspection and a lot of tools that I teach my clients, I did a lot of healing and a lot of growing. And I realized, one, my birth order, being the eldest, played a huge role in that. And being Nigerian played a huge role in that. And the emphasis that's put on being the firstborn, and the emphasis that comes with your responsibility and honor to your parents and your elders. And so I was like, who else feels that their birth order and their culture is keeping them self-sacrificing, that's now compromising their health and their relationships and overworking themselves in their jobs, whether it's the pressure to be married, the pressure to have achievement and success in your job or in your milestones, and how that leads to chronic stress, chronic anxiety, chronic neglecting yourself, which then leads to gaining weight if that's not what your goal is, or you're not eating as well, you have no energy, you're not sleeping well. And so I was like, how can I combine my certification as a wellness coach? And I also have a background in, I'm a certified personal trainer, and I also am a licensed physical therapist assistant. So I worked in outpatient physical therapy for 4 years. So seeing patient outcomes of chronic disease and then caring for 2 parents from chronic disease, I was like, who can I help most with this and blend both of these together? And I was like, well, people who are like me, first generation, eldest daughters, and help them improve their well-being and not let their birth order or their culture keep them in a place where they're perpetually compromising their health, their relationships, and their work-life balance. And because I think a lot of times people don't talk about the resentment that can be breeding for people who are constantly being the hero, doing the right thing, showing up for the family. Sometimes you're resentful as you're doing it, as you're saying yes. And so it compromises your relationship quality. And I was caregiving for my mom, but I also at some point was so resentful towards her. Like, if you would have just X, Y, and Z, I wouldn't be in this situation. And that's just, again, when you have an imbalance of your identity and your birth order, taking over being able to make decisions that also serve you. So that's what led me to help that group of women and use my certification in a way that benefited people who were like me, basically.
Wow, that is so fascinating. And I'm over here nodding my head to all of it because it just makes so much, especially when you highlight birth order and the cultural piece.
Yeah.
And I love how you're able to tie it together to them and do something about it.
Yeah, thanks.
And how mature of you to think that way, just pause and think, if you go this way, this is the outcome, but if you go this way, it could be better. And then you're helping people through that. So that reflection, that introspection, it's just very mature of you to do that. And it's something to be proud of, for sure.
Thanks, Rosalind. So nice of you.
Absolutely. It's interesting. My birth order, Mom, I have 4 other siblings, but I'm not the oldest. I'm the second oldest. My older sister, she was born in Ivory Coast, and then she grew up here, but she's living in Ivory Coast now.
Oh.
So, yeah, so I do have an older sister, but while in the States with my other siblings, I'm the older sister. So I kind of feel like I'm the substitute older sister while she's... Yeah, so I kind of feel what you were saying, taking on all the responsibilities and holding the family together, being that glue, kind of. That pressure.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. It's a lot, yeah.
It's a lot. It is. It really is.
How many other siblings do you have?
So I'm the oldest of 3. I have my sisters in the middle, and then my brother is the youngest. And my brother, actually, we have different dads. So he's fully American, African American. And so me and my sister have the same dad. Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting dynamic too.
It is. It really is. I feel like it's interesting because my dad constantly vented? Not even vented, but if he just got off a phone call with my sister, and I lived with him for a period of time after college, then now he's dumping everything from the phone call about my sister. I don't know why she does this, and she just needs to be responsible, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, are you telling me to do something about it? I don't know why you're telling me this information. I'm not responsible for her decisions. I just remember him doing things like that and just having so much grace for her. And then I would feel okay, but for me, there's no grace given. It's just expected. You should know better. And so that's why when I mentioned working on myself helped me to improve my relationships, that included like with my siblings as well, to learn how to better express boundaries and to better express how I'm feeling. And so, yeah, the sibling dynamic, and it's so interesting because a lot of the siblings, whether they're the middle or youngest, they don't realize what the oldest or even pseudo oldest, I like to say, like you, what they're going through and experiencing because their lived experience is different. So they have literally no idea. And so that's what I've learned just in communication, and it goes a long way. But I had to learn that over time.
Absolutely. Those things do take time. I like that you said, in response to your dad, like, you're not responsible for your siblings' actions. And parents do that. They will rant about your sibling, your brother, your sister did X, Y, Z, and you're like, okay, and like, what do you want me to do about that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're just like awkward, like, okay.
It's like, who's the parent here?
Yeah. Like, did you tell them this on the phone?
Oh my gosh. The amount of times I tell my mom, like, oh, did you say this? Did you say that? What did you say to this? Like, oh my goodness, that's hilarious that you said that. Oh boy, African parents.
I know.
Yeah, they're something. Something
they
else.
Are.
What responsibilities do you feel like you genuinely hold versus responsibilities that you feel like you had to hold when you were still learning about yourself?
So I would say that before, I perceived my responsibility was everyone's well-being and happiness. It was on me. So by saying that, I mean, if I know that my sister is just telling me like, yeah, my tags expire in a couple days, but I'll get to it, but I know who she is, then I feel like, oh, it's my responsibility to try to save her, to ensure that she doesn't get a late fee, to ensure that she doesn't get pulled over with the expired tags. So maybe now I micromanage her. I make it my responsibility. I'm getting frustrated that she's minimizing it, or that she's saying like, okay, like, get off my back. Like, I got it. Right. Versus now, if she tells me that, oh, that's not my responsibility. And so now I have this air of like peace, live my life, and trusting she's an adult who can make a decision. So I think because I perceived other people's well-being and happiness as my responsibility as the eldest, task manager, whatever, I was constantly in other people's business, basically the simplest way to say it. And even if they didn't want me in their business, I was in it, trying to tell them what to do, how to do it. And now I don't perceive that as my responsibility unless they vocalize that they want my help. And that's like, for me, a huge self-assessment. Like, did this person clearly ask for my advice and my help? If they didn't, I'm keeping my thoughts to myself. So that has helped me try to determine the difference between before versus now. And even this week, my brother stayed the night with me. And there's so many things I wanted to say and ask, or like, have you thought about this? Are you going to do this? How much longer are you going? But I was like, Nikkei, is he asking for your advice? No, he's not. He's just sharing. So therefore, do not give your advice. Do not say you should do this. I sometimes preface like, have you thought about? And if he's like, no, not really because of this, then I let it go. So it's just taught me how to stay in my business and stay in my place unless I'm invited to give advice or help them in some way.
I like that word, invited to. How hard or easy is that for you to do now? And does that come with guilt?
I wouldn't say it comes with guilt. I would say it comes with anxiety sometimes because I anticipate the consequences of knowing who my siblings are. And being afraid, like, oh God, what if this turns out to be this mess? Then they are going to ask for my help to help them clean up. And then that's just going to add to my plate. And then the minute when I start to think that's why I feel like being self-aware is really important. Because the minute that I think that, then I'm like, oh, well, they are adults. You're an adult. If they do make a mess and they come to you asking for help to clean it up, you have to determine if you have capacity to help them clean that up or not. So you have the power to say yes or no. So while it doesn't come with guilt, it does come with an anxiousness of what could be and what that's going to require of me. And then when I'm self-aware of that, I just remind myself, you have the power to say no. and offer what you do have capacity to help them with. And they're adults who can figure it out, just like you have to figure life out every day. So that's what helps me kind of navigate the anxiousness of all of that.
Yeah. And I imagine it starting out, that probably was not the easiest thing to remind yourself of.
It was not. That's why a lot of the tools that I teach my clients, I teach that I'm passionate about because I use them for myself. Then when I was growing in this, and even now, to help me stay refined in those skills. Because it was so hard in the beginning. So hard. And, I also had a therapist when I was caregiving for my mom, and she just kept saying, you can't keep saving your brother because you're stealing from him an opportunity to face the reality that his mom is no longer his mom. And that is taking from him his own grieving process. So you can't keep trying to save him, and you need to allow for him to be an adult and start to accept and work through acceptance of the reality of what life is going to be like for him. So it's a continual thing. It was very, very hard, though, in the beginning.
Yeah, right. And it sounds like it's all with care, right? It's not like you're not doing this because you don't care, but because you know the outcome in the end. So they're kind of going to help themselves, and you're not going to be responsible for that. And that gives a weight off your shoulders, too.
Yeah, it does. You're right. And I don't want it to sound like I don't do anything for my siblings or don't offer advice or anything. It's just now it's not unsolicited. And also it's what also is going to be serving me. So if a sibling asks for money, I know over a certain amount, I'm not going to expect for them to pay me back. If they ask for my help, I now know to pause and be like, okay, what am I willing to do without being bitter? So it's more, I check in with myself. So I still give to them and show up for them, but it's not unsolicited, and I check in with myself first.
I love that. And without providing like a whole coaching session, what are some tools or strategies that you can share to help others with their people-pleasing tendencies, just to feel like they are healing or not? They're serving themselves and not serving others.
Yeah.
Too much.
Yeah. Honestly, it's the 3 tools that I teach my clients. It's how to improve the relationship with yourself, because that's going to serve you the best with people pleasing. And those 3 tools are self-awareness, self-trust, and self-compassion. Self-awareness, being aware of your inner and outer world. So really taking the time to self-reflect, whether that's through journaling. And if you don't like journaling, you can do voice recording, voice memos, if you're a verbal processor. But just being aware of what are thoughts you have about certain circumstances in your life will help you to know how you feel about it, and then be able to say, okay, well then what do I need? What needs to change? So the self-awareness is huge. And then self-trust is basically being able to know that you're going to always have your own back. And the way that you grow in it is to not give up on the commitments you make to yourself. And so if you tell yourself, I want to go to the gym, or I want to do this Zumba class, that you don't quit on that commitment, because you're proving to your brain the evidence that I will always have my own back. If you say, I don't have more than $50 to give a family member, that when that family member comes and asks, you say no. So self-trust helps you to trust yourself and the decisions you make for your well-being. And then self-compassion is talk to yourself like you would your best friend. Because I feel like a lot of people pleasers are really critical towards themselves. Why did you say no? Like, you could have made it work. Or if you say yes, like, here we go. Like, you're always saying yes to people. You see how no one comes through for you. So it's like, how are you going to talk to a best friend who is in your shoes and talk to yourself that way? And so these 3 things done over time, repeatedly in baby steps, will help that people pleaser nurture their own relationship with themselves. And the last thing is establishing vision for what you want and how you want your life to be. And this doesn't mean you have to go super far, 10 years. Think about in the next year, how do you want to show up in your life, in your job? How do you want to feel in your body? What is it that you want your lifestyle to look like? Do you want a lifestyle that's full of peace and not drama? Or do you want a lifestyle that's in the city? Like, really ask yourself, what do you want? Because when you do that and you're real and raw with yourself, you're then able to ask yourself, well, am I doing the things I need to do to get me there? And is people pleasing getting in the way of that and helping me get there? Or is it keeping me from doing that? We connect and do things so much easier when we have a why behind it. So while you're going to nurture your relationship with yourself, also establish a vision for what it is that you want, what you want to look like, what you want to feel like, who do you want around you, and then work backwards from there of what can I do a baby step every day to get me towards that.
That is a word. And those are such gems that I'm going to write down and remember and practice for myself, because I fall into that people pleasing bracket as well. And a lot of that does stem from being a first generation American, having immigrant parents, having siblings.
Yeah.
But I feel like everything that you just said does take time, patience with yourself, and practice. And being intentional. Yeah.
Biggest thing is being kind to yourself. For people pleasers, that goes far. Being kind to yourself, and that you're worthy and deserving of saying no to someone else and saying yes to yourself.
And it goes a long way, and it's that sounds selfish and mean, but it's not mean. It's not selfish.
No. It's how you say it,
Right.
It's like one of my favorite phrases I saw, I think it was holistic psychologist, is telling people, I trust you'll figure this out, or I trust that you have the ability to figure this out, or I believe in your ability to figure this out. And I'm like, yeah, because that empowers the other person. Like, oh yeah, I do have the ability to figure this out. This person can't help me right now, but they are saying that they believe in my ability to figure it out. And so that's my favorite thing to remind myself when I feel so guilty that I'm about to say no, even though I know it will serve my mental health or physical health. I'm like, Nikkei, do you believe in their ability to figure it out? And I'm like, yeah, I do. Okay, well then respectfully say no.
Right. Wow. I wish I heard that a long time ago. Man, that's so good. Believe in your ability to figure it out. That's it's so encouraging, and it's gentle, and it's
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then hearing you say that, again, it makes the other person feel like you believe in them, and that makes them feel empowered. It's just a different feeling than saying flat out no. Not that there's anything wrong with saying no with a period, but if you're trying to warm up to that, it's a good place to start.
That's good. I'm going to share that with others too. Yeah. Well, that's really good. I know you shared so many gems, but is there any final message that you have for the listeners before we close out?
Yeah. The last thing is, especially my eldest daughters, or those who assume being in an eldest daughter role, is when you do start to have thoughts or feeling guilt for choosing yourself, feeling guilt for being away from your family, or doing something that just is good for you, but you feel guilty about it, or you're like, what is my family going to say? They're going to say I'm selfish, or they're going to say you don't care about us anymore. Remember that you're not responsible for other people's actions or their thoughts or their words. You're only responsible for yours. That's the only thing you really can control. So if it's a circumstance as if you want to move out of state away from family because you just want to learn how to live on your own by yourself without people being so dependent on you, your family's thoughts about that circumstance is out of your control, and it really doesn't concern you. Instead, think about, what thoughts do you want to think about that circumstance? So if you're thinking, oh, are they going to think I'm selfish? Say, I actually want to replace it with what I want to think. And the thought that I actually want to think is, I'm so excited to see who I'll be from this move. And focus on those kinds of thoughts about your circumstance, because it's going to produce more positive emotions, which is going to lead you to take more empowered action, and is going to lead to more optimal results that you want in your life. So the whole, I'm going to feel guilty, I'm going to feel selfish, those are normal. But then let's use a tool to change being responsible for the thoughts that we can control, and that's our own. We can't control other people's. So that's probably the last thing I just wanted to share that's really common with eldest daughters.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Nikkei, thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
While you're saying that, I'm feeling like I'm hearing you and I'm feeling inspired. Of course, there's a piece of me that is thinking about what my mom would think if I were to, do all of that. While I'm having those thoughts and practicing what you just said, like replace those thoughts. Because I carry that so much, like I feel responsible for their thoughts. But knowing that that's completely out of my control, I don't even have to know what their thoughts are.
You don't. Now, as African parents, they're probably going to tell you anyway, but
know it anyway.
This is why it's important to have your own thoughts about your circumstance, because if they're going to tell you anyway, you're like, okay, I know you said that, but I've already curated all this positive emotion around. I'm so excited to see who I'm going to be from this move, that your thought isn't really now interfering with what my brain has already gotten behind. Like it really helps you to lean in self-trust what you're doing for yourself,
Right. I'm just having so many thoughts of like past scenarios that occurred where it's like I'd go on a trip with my family or my husband or my sisters, and it's like have the responsibility of I should tell my parents about this and gauge their thoughts, maybe carry their thoughts with me. But just remembering that it doesn't matter. Remember the why behind what you're doing and the outcome of that. So I love that you said everything that you did, and I just love this conversation so much.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been so good. I've just loved how this has felt like what is it? Like I don't know if you have ever seen reality shows. This is back when I was in high school, where they had like the testimonial booth where the reality people would go in the booth and be like, so tonight we were at the bar, and I just feel like this has been like an intimate testimonial booth that has just felt so fun and validating, and even knowing that you relate to how I've felt, even though I've done a lot of healing, it still helps me feel validated and not crazy, okay, somebody else gets it too. So I appreciate the space that you've, provided for us to have a good conversation.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to have talked with you, and I'm happy that you have clients that you can relate to, and you guys can have moments like this too.
Yeah.
Teaching and helping them to heal and move past all of that.
Yeah.
People pleasing gunk. That's what it is. It's terrible. But no, I love the work that you're doing. And
thank you.
I'm definitely going to stay in touch.
Yes.
I might even have to schedule a session because I'm realizing I have a lot to work on for sure. Yeah.
Oh, well, the power of, listen, it's a journey, but it's a journey worth taking, because I think about people and women I know in their 40s and 50s who haven't faced this work, and I don't want to be like that. I want to be in my 40s and 50s living intentional, liberated, free from other people's thoughts, and not letting it dictate my life. So sometimes I say, it's been really messy the last 3 years, but I'm so happy to be where I'm at and the work I'm continuing to do. Because I'm not perfect. I get around certain friend groups or certain things that may trigger me, and then I kind of revert back to my way of shutting down and being quiet and not being seen or heard. So there's always work to grow and do, but man, doing it is worth it. It's been so worth it, and I know it will continue to be. So that's why I say talk kindly to yourselves as you navigate this journey and growing this muscle.
Absolutely. And you are reaping the benefits, and you are seeing growth. And you still, there's still work to do, but seeing the growth is something too. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
I love this moment and the time we just shared.
I know, me as well.
It's doing a lot for me right now. I appreciate you, Nikkei. It was wonderful talking with you today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me again. I'm so honored. I love what you're doing. I love the mission of this podcast and the elevation of people's stories that we don't really get to hear a lot that look like us. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening. All original music produced by Stubborn Saul. You can find him on all music listening platforms at STBRNSAL.